Hello, Yes But Why listeners. This is your host, Amy Jordan. Welcome to Yes But Why episode 269, my chat with podcaster and Twitch streamer Sammi Dittloff. But first, let's talk about our sponsors. Yes But Why podcast is brought to you by Audible. Sign up today for your 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. You get a free audiobook download, as well as access to hundreds of books and podcasts. I just got this month's credit, and it's burning a hole in my little wallet. But honestly, I'm still knee-deep in Russell Brand's Revelation. It's really philosophical, so I get to thinking, and then I have to go back and re-listen. Go now to audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy to sign up and get your Audible account today. Yes But Why podcast is also sponsored by podcastcadet.com. Podcastcadet.com is the company that my husband and I started to help podcasters. Go to podcastcadet.com and connect with us. We want to help you start or improve your podcast. We're also about to get back into doing workshops at conventions again. We'll be at Comicpalooza in Houston teaching a boot camp. Join us there. Or we can do a personalized class just for you and your team. Whatever it is we can do to help, let us know. Mention code YBY20 and you'll get 20% off the first service or workshop you buy. We can't wait to hear from you. Podcastcadet.com. Yes But Why podcast is also brought to you by True Hemp Science, an Austin-based company. Local, fresh CBD oil. True Hemp Science is my resource for vegan-friendly, whole plant extract CBD oil. Check out truehempscience.com to see all the CBD products available to you now. Use code YesButWhy7 to get 7% off your order of $50 or more. You get all the therapeutic goodness of CBD, plus you'll get a free packet of 2 yummy CBD edibles with your order. truehempscience.com. This week on Yes But Why, I chat with Sammi Dittloff. Sammi is an actor, writer, podcaster, Twitch streamer, and crafter. Sammi is a very busy yet highly motivated person. She's a funny, gracious gal who lives life at a breakneck speed, and we hit it off immediately. Stay tuned. I now present to you Yes But Why episode 269. Sammi Dittloff and a billion ways to build something creative. Enjoy. I'm Amy Jordan, and this is Yes But Why podcast. Yeah.
Okay, so I was an only child. Well, I am an only child. It's not like I was one, and then all of a sudden, when I was in my 20s, my parents had another kid or something.
That'd be wild.
Had me. Yeah, they had me. Well, at the time it was considered later in life, and now it's just kind of the normal thing. Like my mom had me when she was 35, and yeah, I was so great that they were just like, "Why have another one?" We knocked it out of the park. No, I'm just kidding. But
Great.
But I was very self-directed, They were like, we just kind of let you do whatever you want because you just kind of went off and did your own stuff. So there's a bunch of old cassette tapes of me when I'm like 3 years old and I'm making up songs about pancakes, and I made books on tape, and I would be like, okay, when I go, turn the page, and I like make a noise and read Arthur books. And I was totally like a fort kid, and I would go outside. I would adventure out. We had 3 acres. So, I was like, I live in the forest, and I would do like adventure journals and pack things like I was gone on an expedition for days. And my favorite memories are like taking sheets and putting them around my treehouse when it rained. And I would take a laundry basket and fill it with books and snacks. And I would just sit out there for hours. And I was like the happiest. So I love doing stuff like that. I also would I loved makeup. And so my mom would get me those, play makeup kits, and I would just slather them all over my face. And then I would rehearse like Disney numbers, and I would put on shows in the living room, and I would make tickets, and I had an audience, and I'd be like, the show isn't starting yet. Please do not come into, don't come by the stage. I will tell you when I was like very, directorial, I guess I would say. And, and then I would like press play on, Oliver and Company. And I would do the whole Perfect Isn't Easy Bette Midler number. And like, there's a cassette tape of me directing my mom, like when I'm 3, and I'm telling her how to be Pinocchio. And I'm doing the like, I've got no strings to hold me down. And I like fall and I laugh and I'm like, and see, he falls down, I'm like, and then I'm like, now you do Pinocchio, and my mom gets up there and she's doing it all wrong. And I'm not cool with it. And I just go, okay, get off the stage. And she wouldn't. And so I'm like, get off the stage. Again, no movement. And then you hear me go, get off the stage.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like, I can only do it right. You're doing it all wrong. Let me be Pinocchio. And I come up and I'm like, you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. So I was very much that kid. I was always like the actor kid. It's funny because I was talking to my partner's sister today. She's got 2 kids and she's like, put them in sports, like the kids are all about sports. And I was like, oh, I hated sports. My mom tried to get me involved in sports. And I was like, no, this is not for me. Like, I just run away. But when it came to, any kind of acting, any kind of performance, music, anything like that, I was like all over it. Like, I couldn't get enough. And when I was in kindergarten, we had like these pictures of like, what do you want to be when you grow up type of stuff. And, so it was like a firefighter, a doctor, all that kind of stuff. And I was like looking through and I'm like, there's no actor. I was pissed. And there was like ballerina and I held it up and I begrudgingly said, like, I don't want to be a ballerina. I want to be an actor, but there is no actor card. So I'm just letting you know, like just like indignant 5-year-old, just like, this is not what I want to be when I grow up. Okay. I just want to make that clear. I just want everyone to know. So I was very focused on that. And at some point between then and 9, I wanted to be like 8 different things. And I actually, oh God, I wish I had it right next to me. It's upstairs. But I wrote like a 40-page autobiography at 9 years old about everything I wanted to be when I grew up. And I had a whole chapter about chickenpox. I had a whole chapter about my trip to Disney World. And on the back, it says like, I want to be a writer, a cartoonist, an actor, I don't know what else I put on there, like all kinds of stuff. It was just like, but it was a lot of creative stuff. Like, I just want to do all these creative things. And I really credit my parents because they never told me I couldn't do everything. And anyone who knows me in adulthood knows that like I do everything. So not a lot has changed. I don't think, well, it depends on who you ask, I guess. If you ask my partner if I'm bossy, he'd say yes. He said to my parents the other day, he's like, no one tells Sammi what to do. And you better not micromanage her, because that's not going to go well. And I'm like, thanks.
Nice. There you go.
But yeah, I think I always had like a clear vision that I wanted to do something creative, and I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I knew I wanted that to be part of my life. And I think 5-year-old Sammi would be happy about where I ended up. I hope she is. I think about her.
There's a lot of performing happening in your life. So there's and almost all the things in the autobiography are handled. So, that's pretty good. I was like, check the autobiography. What if the ones you can't remember are like yoga, which you just mentioned?
That would be so funny. No, it's not.
Things, but they're like, it's like marketing. You're like, how did I know what marketing was? But you did.
Like accounting, agency, marketing. Like what? How did I? No, that's not. If I had like politics on there, I would have been really surprised too. But I wasn't quite there yet. I was getting there at 9. Yeah, but it took me till probably middle school to really start to get into it, and like start to form an opinion about,
sure,
what I liked and didn't like based on what my parents told me and then what I learned on my own,
Yeah. Politics for me was always a very active thing. My mom was super political. And so from a very young age, we were at like rallies and events and holding picket signs and making people sign the petition and waving flags at people and stuff like that. We were, I told somebody the other day that my mom wouldn't let us eat grapes when we were growing up, and I didn't have grapes until I was in college. And so like for me, grapes are always a real treat because I never had them when I was a kid. And so I put it on Facebook and somebody was like, yeah, that was a real thing that happened. Like in California, they boycotted, eating grapes because the grape workers were not unionized and they were being taken advantage of during these years. And I was like, man, my mom's political was on point. Like she really did it. And it was like a big part of my life to give up this thing. And I didn't like miss it because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what grapes were. But later, when I was in college and I was like, oh, are those grapes? Could I have those? They're like, yeah, I guess. And I was just like, oh my God, I've never had this before. People thought I was crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, hey man, I don't know what you don't eat. This
is contraband,
I was like, don't tell my mom. Oh God, these are so good. Do these have sugar in them? Is that why she doesn't want me to have them?
Oh my God. That's like, that's a lot better than my mom just like boycotting Chili's because the waitress rushed her. But we never went back to Chili's after that.
But no, my political stand. Like it's
my parents are actually super political, but they didn't really do demonstrating. But my mom was an educator for 30 years, and in Wisconsin, that wasn't easy with Scott Walker as our governor, and some other governors before that were also not ideal. So,
a lot of people aren't super great with teachers. They're like, what they need? Nothing. Let's just give them like an empty room and a stick. They're going to be fine. They can figure it out.
They're creative, and it's so weird when you have a governor whose wife is a teacher and he doesn't care about teacher. That's pretty funny, Tommy Thompson. But yeah, so shots fired. No, so I grew up in a very like pro-union family.
Me too.
And my whole dad's side of the family is very like union oriented and like we're in unions. And then my mom was obviously in the teachers union. And so that was always like a big deal growing up, was like support unions. And that was something that before I had an understanding of what that meant, I knew that that was like a good thing and that I should like that, and that's kind of interesting when I think about it now, because in grad school, I actually studied in my old neighborhood where my dad grew up in the late 1800s. He wasn't alive then. He's not that old. But in the late 1800s, it was a factory town, and it was the site of a pretty violent uprising after May Day. So in 1886, there was like a crew that was doing stuff for May Day on May 1st, obviously in Chicago, filtered down to Milwaukee. And a group of workers were protesting outside of the rolling mill. And I'm trying to remember basically the militia, a private militia got called on them, and a handful died. But you know, that's why we have 8-hour work days. Anyway, so it's really interesting that was something that I'm just thinking about that, like that I focused on that in grad school and wrote a whole paper about it and everything. And it was in the neighborhood where my dad grew up. But yeah, so that was kind of, I feel like we did a lot of conversing around those things and a lot of support around those things. I think my mom did go protest during like Act 10 stuff, but when I was a kid, we didn't really do that stuff. It was more just a lot of talks about that kind of thing. And we lived in a pretty conservative area. So, my parents would talk to me kind of about how like they were different from, you know, like you're going to run into people who do not feel the way that you do in this town.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an interesting learning lesson growing up.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's interesting how our parents' political leanings can, you know, affect us in that way. Like you're talking about unions. I'm like, yeah, me too. I've always been into unions. I feel like the world, and admittedly I live in Texas now, which is a very anti-union place. But like I feel like in general, unions are not popular right now, which is a darn shame because I feel like we're in a time when unions could be quite helpful. I mean, though I suppose a bunch of them weren't. But again, nobody's expecting everyone to need help all at once. So you can't quite fault the unions for that.
I mean, no kidding. Well, and it's like, look at what's happening with food service workers right now. You know, that it's not shocking that no one wants to work when they're not making any money and not being treated well when they come into work. It's just like, come on, you know. I didn't mean to make this all heavy. I was talking about songs about pancakes. And I feel bad about the people who work at Noodles. You know?
Well, we can come back around, but we can go down a little food service rabbit hole. I was like, I can write down cut food service if you don't want it to.
I definitely wanted to.
But
I definitely want to talk about it. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting like thing that's been illuminated by COVID is like, it's almost like there's been a few things that in the moments that we've taken a break from living the breakneck speed of life that we were living for a long time, we're all of a sudden like, hold on, wait, I feel like we're being super mean to a few groups of people. Could we like rectify that? Like in general, we are just treating everybody in food service like they are trash. And I don't know if we've all realized, but they seem to be, after doctors, the most important people. Like for real. I thought for sure when literally the only people allowed to work for a while were doctors and like delivery guys, that like Futurama was right. Like the delivery guy really is the most important job. Like, and I thought maybe we'd have some respect for these people. Like, yeah, they do a solid service. I enjoy a restaurant. Have I been to one in a long time? No. Would I love to? Yes, I would love to see them and give them lots of money, right? Because thank God that they're still doing their jobs, right? I really expected there to be a turn of sort of respect for this crowd. But yeah, I mean, there's just no one protecting them. There's no one to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat them like crap when it turns out they're the most important people around.
Well, you know, it's like, growing up with an educator who was severely underpaid no matter what, you know, and then, you know, I was a food service worker for 6 years, I think, in various different positions. And yeah, it's like there are two things that I strongly believe. Like if you're going to be involved in theater, you should tech at least once. And if you're going to have any job in the professional world, you need to start in either retail or food service. And you've got to learn, because it's like, you can always tell when you're a food service worker, you can always tell who's in or been in food service, like when you're serving them. So I was mostly a server. I worked at Chuck E. Cheese, which maybe with my performance, you know, probably not Chuck. I was Chucky for 2 years. Yeah, it was really fun. And I ran pizzas. Like that was my main job, as I was a pizza runner. And And I worked at I was a barista at a couple places. I worked at a casino as a server and a cocktail server. Yeah, so I've done all kinds of stuff like that. And it's like, you can always tell who works in food service because they're the ones who are going to they're going to start stacking up the plates and, and making sure that everything's nice for you. And they're like, oh, no rush, no big deal. And they're going to leave the fat tips. That's always, you can always tell. And yeah, it's like you gain a new perspective. You look around a restaurant differently and you feel differently about food service workers after you've done it. At least that's the way that I feel. I remember when I was younger, my parents, this was kind of in the 90s too. And I feel like it was more normal to tip 15%. But then when I started working in restaurants, I was like, you have to tip at least 20. And I would hound them. And I would be like, change that number, add another $1, whatever, when I'd go out to eat with my parents. And it really did change my perspective on, and I'd be like, they're swamped right now. Be nice. Give them an extra $5 or, whatever. And I wish everybody had that perspective. And yeah, I think it goes the same with performing. I was lucky in a way because I had acted all through elementary and middle school. I did Annie Jr., and all that stuff. And then in high school, I just played, that was the last adult role I played. And then I played all children in high school because I'm under 5 feet tall. And when I started in high school, I was in everything. I was that person. Like I said, I was in every club. I did so my sophomore year, I was in marching band. I was in 3 bands outside of school. I was in an orchestra, a band, and a chamber orchestra that are junior professional groups for people who want to go on and be in symphony orchestras. And
were you just a go-getter and were yeah, I need to be in every single group? Or were you a phenom and people were trying to get you on their in their symphony?
A little of both, probably. I was really good at oboe. But yeah. I had a nemesis. I had an oboe nemesis. He was because I split my time between a bunch of things, because I like doing a lot of things. I have a hard time focusing on just one thing. I like doing a lot of things well instead of maybe one thing perfectly. And my nemesis, he lived oboe, and that's still what he's doing today.
I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Maybe I've looked him up once or twice just to be like, what's he doing?
Does he still play oboe? Oh, you are? All right, acceptable.
Fine, yeah, then I concede. But the two of us were always neck and neck at auditions and stuff.
Who knows, man? If you talk to him later, he might be like, oh my God, thank you so much for constantly competing with me. Because if you didn't, I never would be where I am doing this in this band or whatever. You never know.
Well, maybe. So it's funny because maybe I ran into him on Tinder when I was single and I almost swiped right just to see if we would match. And then I was like, I don't want to open that door. And I swiped left. Because I'm not interested. He popped up and he was kind of far away. And I was like, I think he swiped right on me because I think he's out of my radius, Anyway.
You swipe right and then you send him a message and it's just an oboe and he takes it wrong. You're like, whoa.
No, I didn't mean it like that. But anyway, so yeah, I did a lot of that stuff. And because I was involved in so much music, because I really thought I was going to be a conductor. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. By 6th or 7th grade, I was like, I want to be a conductor for youth orchestras. I think that would be the coolest job in the world. And that's what I want to do. And so everything I was doing was kind of gearing towards that. But I had a hard time giving up acting because I enjoyed it so much. And I didn't want to take it out of my life. And so I was like, I want to do theater, put me in, to the director. I was like, please. And so my high school theater teacher, who is he's my Facebook friend today. So maybe I'll share this and be like, I gave you a name drop. But Mr. C, I can't call him his actual name still.
Okay.
He's like, you're an adult, you're in your 30s. And I'm like, I can't. I can't do that. That feels inappropriate. But no, I came to him and I was like, I want to be in your show. And he's like, well, I can't cast you in the play because you're in marching band. It's at the same time. Our marching band was competitive. So like every weekend we would go to compete in shows. And he's like, that's just too much time that you'd be taking away from the play. So I can't cast you in this. But I'm willing to, if you want to do tech, come do tech. And I was like, at first I remember being like, that's beneath me. I am an actor, like I am too good for this shit. And I was like, fine, I'll do tech. And it was the best experience I could have ever hoped for in theater. I learned so much about what happens behind the scenes. I gained a huge respect for the people who do tech. Without them, nothing would happen. And I was responsible for the scrim. And so I had the pull a job. And I built a stool with all of my friends. It was like 5 of us, and we built a stool together. It wasn't hard. I don't know why we all took a leg and we all, put it together. And we actually called ourselves the Screw Crew. And when we graduated, we each took a piece with us, which was really sweet.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it was really nice. And I was what was I? I think I was on stage left. And yeah, it was just a great experience. And then after that, it just changed my perspective on acting. And the same way that working in food service changed my perspective on how to treat, not that I was like a rude asshole or something before that, but I just got like extra thoughtful, extra generous.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I first started in school, I was doing theater and doing a few plays and acting. But once you get into the real world, they're not handing out acting roles that easily. And so I got into stage management and production management.
Nice.
And
yeah.
honest to goodness, the tech side, and then I also did assistant lighting design a couple times. The tech side was so much better. Like, you meet more people. Cool. Everyone's a little bit chiller. Like, everyone's really intense on the acting side. Like, everyone's like, this is important. Do you know how important this is? And you're like, yeah, I know how important it is. But then you hang out with the techies and they're like, it's not that important. And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. I loved kind of, like the low key, just kind of fun trash talk and tech is really fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's super fun.
And then like we had, our manager was like, he would come on and we'd be like, God's talking. Do you hear it? It's God. And it was just such a fun group of people. They were so generous with their time, like teaching me things because I was just this clueless sophomore who didn't know anything. And I was brand new to the school. So I'm just like walking into this situation where I'm just like, accept me. And they were like, and the tech crew is just such an accepting crowd of people. They're just so great. And it was fun to be like, it kept me grounded throughout. Because then I was in musical and most of the plays moving forward. And I did I acted at every chance I got. And I feel like it connected me so much more to the overall production that I wouldn't have gotten without that. And I think I'm trying to remember because I joined like the, theater guild or whatever in high school. I can't remember what it was called, but there's like some, national organization, that where like you have to hit a certain amount of like hours of stage time or whatever to get in. And I don't even remember what it is
like
anymore.
Equity?
No, it was like
a high school thing.
It was kind of like National Honor Society, but for theater. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I can't remember what it was called. Like, I think it was just like International Junior Thespian Society or something like.
Sure.
I don't know. Someone's yelling it in their car right now. They're like, "This is what it's called."
Exactly.
How can you forget that? But one of the things, one of the things that we talked about was, like God, they should make it a requirement for admission that you do tech for a year. Like that would be really cool. Anyway, so that's enough of my. I feel the same
way about your tech to actor thing as when you're talking about food service, how you can like tell people who have never been in food service when you're waiting on them. Yeah. You can totally tell actors who have never done tech. Like when you are a person who's like on the side, because I've done tech with like high level actors, and some of them are, you know, you're standing back there. I had to do a costume change one time, and like, so I'm like holding a jacket and some gloves, and the guy has to run off and like take off 3 things, and I put the jacket and the gloves on him, and he was so fast and so smooth, and he would just turn around right at the end and just be like, thank you so much, and then walk away. And I was like, that's it, man. That's how you know this guy like gets it and like connects. Because there were other people who they would do the same movement, but then they would not acknowledge you as a person. They'd just be like, the hanger that handed me the jacket, right? And then they just walk off, and you're like, all right, well, great, whatever. But it's like, it's just so interesting, the like different vibes and like being able to understand the fullness of a production versus like, oh, just my part is what's important. You're like, okay, cool. But it's also like 50 people coming together to a collaborative project, which is kind of amazing. And it's happening. Like, get into it.
Right. But you're the star. Okay. Yeah. You know, and I actually, it's interesting that you said you did a quick change, because so my first musical at my new high school was Music Man, and I was Amaryllis, and it was amazing. And I played piano for real. And I remember like, the director was like, all right, so what we're going to do is you're going to mime it. You're going to cue the pit, and then she's going to play it in the pit. And I was like, I play piano. Can we just get a real piano up here? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, thank you. It was so fun, because I got to like play piano and act and sing on stage. I was like, this is the best. And I had to run off after that scene and then come back in like a Daniel Boone costume or something, you know? And so it was like go from this pink frilly dress to like, you know, all like, you know, the tassel-y outfit, whatever. And it was like 30 seconds, just like run, come back. And it was so fun. And it was such a bonding moment with a person who like helped me get quick change, you know, and the two of us would always be like, like right before I go out. And so it's like one of my very fond memories of high school theater, and just going like, like the things that you're capable of doing when you put your mind to it, and how quickly you can get things together and make magic happen for an audience was always like really like exhilarating to me. Like, and I loved that in tech too, with like a quick scene change. Like when you get really down, you're like, yeah, like that looks sharp. Like that's so cool. The lights come back up and they're like, whoa. And you're like, yes. So that kind of stuff is always, like very satisfying to me. And, it so grinds my gears when actors take, you know, stage managers and tech folks for granted. It's just like, it's like when you're out on a date and the person you're with is treating your server shitty. It's the same thing. You're just like, I don't want to be around you. This will be our last date.
Yeah, you know, sometimes that's a great way to tip for the singles listening. Take them when you can, take them back to a restaurant, see how they treat them. Easy way to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, totally,
like,
totally.
Okay, great. See you later. I will be taking an Uber from the restaurant home. No problem.
That is like one of the things that really endeared me to the person I'm with now. Like the two of us actually met when I worked at a bar. and he was friends with one of the bartenders. So we got to know each other like, you know, years and years ago and hung out in that capacity. And then when we started dating like 3 years ago, I remember like at restaurants, he will strike up a conversation with literally anybody, you know, so at the checkout, anything, you know, he wants to know how you're doing. He's like the most personable guy ever. And he'll just be like, and just kind of brighten someone's day with just small talk. And I don't know if he knows that he has that gift, but he really has that ability to just connect with someone really quickly. And right before that, I had dated a guy who was kind of short with like a valet, and I was like, ooh. And it made me feel icky. And I was like, I don't think this relationship is long for this world.
It's crazy, the little things that'll push you over the edge.
Oh, yeah. I was like, he was kind of like not super nice to that guy who parked his old fancy car. So I'm not cool with that.
Right? These poor kids doing the valet. If they're not crashing your car, you be thankful. They drove it and parked it for you. You could have had to do that yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my partner now, he was a valet in Florida for a couple of years. So
whoa, that's a wild place.
Mad respect for valets as well.
Yeah, man. Oh man, crazy. So you've been involved in this, collaborative art situation. We've been talking about how we are, so totally appreciative of the full process and how, we want people to be able to see it from all sides. How did your many faceted, creative loves lead you through? Like, what did you end up getting did you go to college? Did you get a degree in something? It's hard to even know. It's like, she's like, nope, I didn't do it. I just won a crocheting competition and moved to Japan. I was like, okay, great. Like, I believe anything. I believe
it. I just went and got all the degrees instead. No, so.
All of them, yes.
That was the opposite. So I went to school initially. I went to a music conservatory, like a college with a music conservatory. And so my goal was, I'm going to be a conductor. That's what I'm going to do. But I always had this feeling, in the back of my mind, like when I went to schools, I had gone to maybe 4 or 5 different schools and met with their oboe teachers to see who I clicked with. And, because they're going to be the person who's instructing you throughout your undergrad. You want to make sure that it's like a good experience and that they want to develop you into the person that you want to be, because everyone's got a different technique when it comes to, your musicianship. And so that was one thing I was mindful of. But every school that I went to, I was like, am I going to get to act as well? And a lot of them were like, no. And I went to like Northwestern and they were like, also, we're not going to give you any money. And I was like, peace, I need a scholarship. So I ended up at this private college in Indiana, and the school is about 2,000 people and the conservatory was 200 people. And I was a music education major. And by my first semester, I was like, I either want to work with early childhood, 3 to 5 year olds, or I want to work with high schoolers. And I don't want to work with anyone in between. Because I really loved, like, at 3 to 5, they're just like, yeah, like, is opera cool? And they're like, yeah, opera's cool. Like, I'll listen to anything you play me. And they're just like so game to do anything. They're not closed off to new experiences. And I thought that was really cool. And in high school, they're like serious, and some of them they want to go on and be professional musicians, and you can help them get there. So like that to me was also very cool. And so that was kind of what I was looking at, but it was around the same time as No Child Left Behind, which I don't know if you know this, left a lot of children behind. And
I thought that was the idea, but it turned out it wasn't supposed to.
It's like the Clean Air Act, did not lead to clean air. It's so weird how that happens.
No.
And so I was in Indiana, which wasn't a great state for extracurriculars. And so music was just leaving the schools like everywhere. And we were, the one thing I really liked about my program is by your freshman year, you're in schools. And that doesn't happen a lot of the times. Like I was looking at a college closer to home, but I didn't want to learn from all the same teachers that I had grown up with. I was like, I want a new perspective. I want to learn from some new people, even though I loved them. But at that school, it's like you learn you do all the percussion, woodwind, string techniques, and you kind of learn how to teach every instrument. And then they put you in the schools like your sophomore, junior year. And at my school, it was like, by freshman year, we're going to put you in the schools, because if you don't like being in the schools and you don't like teaching a class, then you should not be a teacher. So I really liked that approach. But it was depressing because I would go into schools and they'd be like, yeah, so we only have music once every other week or whatever for this much time. And I was like, oh, you don't have it every day? No, that ended, we don't have gym anymore. The kids are just walking around the outside of the school and that's their gym class. And I'm like, even though I wasn't a big fan of gym class, I don't think it's good not to have anything, So it was really disheartening. And I also was having a hard time practicing 5 hours a day, every day, and not getting to do anything else because I like doing a little bit of everything. And I wanted to have a social life. I wanted to act. I wanted to be creative in other ways. And it was like, if you're not in that practice room all day, every day, and I was an oboist, so I had to make reeds. So it's like you're practicing and you're doing shop class. And making reeds is a kind of a pain in the butt. And so, I joined a sorority and so that I could like meet more people. And I would go to parties and people would be like, why haven't I ever seen you before? And I'd go, I'm a music student. And they're like, oh, that's why. I just would never see you. You don't leave that one building. And that to me was just starting to get kind of strange. And I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And doing all of that kind of killed my love of just playing music to play music when you're forced to do it. At least for me, there's some people who that's all they want to do, and I remember my theater teacher in high school saying like, if all you know how to do is act, if that's like the only thing you think you can do, that's what you should be doing. If you can't see yourself doing anything else and nothing else makes sense. And he's like, but if you can see yourself doing something else, you probably should do that. And he's like very pragmatic like that. He's a great guy. He's so great. And I was like, you know what? I can see myself doing other things. And so I transitioned from music ed to music business for a while. I was a radio DJ as well at the school. Of
course you were.
Of course I was. I had a rockabilly show by my sophomore year, which was really fun. Really enjoyed that. It was fun to do our own format and have giveaways and stuff. And you could stream it online so my friends in Milwaukee could hear it. But yeah, so I did that for a while. And then I was like, you know what? I think I just want to be a writer. And I just totally changed my whole life. I was like writing in every class, I was just like sitting there writing a bunch of stuff. And I was like, I kind of want to, maybe I want to be a music journalist. Maybe that's what I want to do. And then when I tried to transition out of like the music school completely, they're like, well, then you would lose your scholarship. So I came back home and went to journalism school at our local university, our local public university. And my parents were happy because I was saving them money. And I went from having loans to pay to my parents saying, well, we'll cover this because it's state school. And I was like, cool, great. And that was like the smartest decision I ever made because I have very little student debt, although, well, we'll get into more later. And so I got my undergrad in journalism with a focus in strategic communications, which was like PR advertising. I was really interested in why people buy the things they buy. Like what makes someone interested in a brand? What creates that loyalty? And I was always really into that Wayne's World scene where they do all the product placement. I always thought that was like the coolest part of the movie. And I would like sit and rewind it and watch it over and over again as a kid.
That's so funny. Whenever we see product placement in a movie, my husband and I go like, Coke got their money.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Whenever we see it, we're like, oh, look at that. Look at them drinking. Oh, is that Sunny Delight? Sunny Delight got their money.
Look at that Dell computer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's always an Apple. Let's not lie.
Well, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was a lot of Dell.
Yeah. All right.
So I was in like, classes about, like different, how brands, will build a certain persona around what their target is and then try to go after that. And, it's like, I'm like very much a PC Android person, so, and I look at that like, yeah, they know how to target me. I'm a gamer girl, I am into like, yeah, the idea of like building your own machine. That's something I'm going to be doing with my friend probably in the next year or two. Like I've got a decent streaming computer right now, but I want to get a way cooler setup, you know, and it's like, I like the freedom and flexibility that you get with a PC. And so it's like, yeah, of course the commercials are going to focus on, you can make this however you want. And like the, you know, opportunities are limitless. And look at this frame rate. Isn't this cool? It's crystal clear. And that resolution. Oh, wow. No, you know, smooth transitions, whatever. So, and then, you know, if you're like an Apple person, it's more focused on, you know, like the design element, the aesthetic, being creative. It's not like, I've always felt very fenced in with an Apple computer or with an Apple device. Like, oh, there's only so much I can do. And to me, that's like not appealing. But my partner is like such an Apple person because he's a graphic designer. So I'm like, well, yeah, of course they're appealing to graphic designers. And if you're a designer, it makes sense for you to do that. And if you aren't looking for that like hackability, then it is, you know, it's safe, it's smooth, it's, you know, well contained. Your phone and your computer and it all can work together and talk to each other. But yeah, you know, so it's like they're marketing the design and the idea behind it versus like, if you're thinking about like a PC or an Android or something like that, that's more focused on like functionality and the things that you can do instead of like who you can be. At least that's the way that I look at it. But yeah. Those were the kind of conversations that we had. And so I really wanted to be like a brand manager. And I met some brand managers from different companies. And I thought it was really interesting that they would like do like ethnographic studies and like walk around with shoppers and watch them pick up things. Like I met the brand manager of Jockey at the time. And she's like, yeah, I would walk around with men and watch them buy underwear. And, you know, and they'd have like a specific thing that they needed to go get, you know, like go get a pair of gray briefs or whatever. And she'd watch them go into the store and then, you know, they gloss over a whole area and she'd be like, well, why didn't you go over there? And they're like, oh, well, they're all red because the tops of the boxes were all red. But actually the colors of the briefs were different. There were like words on them, but there was no like clear plastic or anything that indicated the color besides like it being written on there. So they just saw red and went, oh, these are all red briefs. And they just like moved on from it. And I was like, that's fascinating to me to just like watch people's shopping habits or the things they do. Like I've always thought it's interesting the way they, you know, organize a grocery store and, you know, all the fresh stuff's at the perimeter and, you know, like all that kind of, and like the way that we move through a grocery store and where they have certain things to try to like draw you in, you know, in a bigger sense. But, so I had like kind of maybe grander, more, I don't know, psychological plans for my career, but I ended up, I worked at the Onion for a couple of years. That was kind of that was like my, summer gig turned into like a part-time job while I was in college, while I was a food service worker as well. But
were you writing or were you brand managing?
I was the promo person. So I was a promotions coordinator for 2 years in our local office. And so we had a city. So like for those unfamiliar, The Onion is a satirical newspaper that is no longer in print, but was when I was working there, which is very cool. And then on the inside, you've got the AV Club, which is the real stuff. And what I found out when I worked for The Onion is that some people thought everything in it was fake or that everything in it was real. And both were shocking. But the very inside is the AV Club. That's all the real stuff. And then there was like a city copy on the inside, you know, at the cities that had like a physical paper. And so we had on-staff writers and then we had salespeople who would sell the ads. And then I was a promotions coordinator. And first I started as a street teamer and then I worked my way up. And I got to give away free beer, free tickets, free swag, go to concerts, meet people, be at festivals. It was the best job. Yeah. And I was getting paid like $10 an hour. And I was like, this is the best job in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought I had
use any of the psychological stuff to like create these promotions? You learned all this stuff about like why people are into it. did you use any, I mean, even if you're like, have no examples that you can remember, like, do you think that you use the sort of psychological stuff to like create promotional things, or was it just easier to do promotional?
We had like a very, I wouldn't say formulaic, but there were like certain things that we would like put in emails and stuff. So we would have, we would partner with local concert venues, and we would do like ticket giveaways for like the first 5 rows of a concert. And so we would just like send out emails to our newsletter list. Here's a hot tip for people. Seriously, join like local newsletters that are doing giveaways like that, because the same people enter all the time. So sometimes when I would see a new name, I would just draw that name, because I was like, the same 5 people get the tickets all the time, because they're always entering. So, I mean, just word for the wise, like some giveaways are easier to win than you think, because fewer people enter than you think. So, but that was at least my experience. And then, yeah, I mean, it was mostly like event stuff and mostly just talking to people. So I would write emails for the promos and stuff, but it was mostly just like getting to know people and talking to them, and then like having them, we just wanted them to join our email list, really. And then they would enter to win free stuff. And then we could email them about other places where they could find us and whatever. And so that was kind of the big part of my job. And then once a month, we would partner with a brewery or a bar and a brewery, and we would give away free beer for 2 hours, which was really, really fun. And it was called the Beer Society, and it was one of the best parts of my job. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't like sales necessarily, but I really like promotions. Like which sounds weird, but I liked just being able to talk about cool things that you could do for free and things that I enjoyed. So I don't know if I really thought that much about the psychology behind it. It was just like, I believed so strongly in how cool The Onion was that I was like, well, you should definitely be on our email newsletter. Obviously, it's the coolest place to be.
Yeah. Well, that helps.
Yeah.
It certainly helps if you actually like your job to be able to sell your job.
I feel lucky, because I feel like most of my jobs I've had, I don't know. We counted one time, it was like over 24 jobs, but most of the jobs I've had, I've liked. But yeah, I did that in college. And then I had an internship at a advertising agency that turned into a 5-year career. And there I did like data analytics for social media clients. So, and it was like when social media was brand new. They're like, do you want to join our social media department? And it was like, we're trying to figure out Twitter, and I'm like, cool. And so I would like create reports for our clients about like, here's how your Facebook posted, and here's something you could try in the future. And I would start to identify these trends with different brands and say, listen, people really like it when you post pictures of babies, so you should keep posting pictures of babies, or people really like it when you ask open-ended questions about these things. So if you want to get conversation started, you should do these things. And this was like before organic reach on Facebook pages dropped to 0 in like 2015. This was like before that. This was in like the good times. So, so you could do a lot of stuff organically and not spend a lot of money and get a lot of people conversing on your Facebook pages and stuff. It was an interesting time to do that job. So I worked for Travel Wisconsin, and Boston Store, and which is Bon-Ton. It's like a bigger department chain, more in the Midwest than other areas. Medela, which is like a breast pump company. I learned a lot about breast pumps at 20 years old.
Probably a good time to learn it.
Yeah. Master Lock, that was a big one. Learned a lot about Master Lock. But
like
yeah,
you were doing social media. The ad agency was working for all these companies, and you were doing social media for them.
I was doing like reporting for them. So I had other people on the team. I would do some writing, like I wrote some social posts and some blogs and stuff, but I was like the numbers nerd. So they would just be like, go do number things, because no one else wants to do that. And I thought that stuff was fascinating. And so I was like, cool. So I would be the one who would produce the reports and be like, this is how this is doing, and this is what you should do in the future. But it's like, I would spend years with the same client getting to know them. And so then I would have these like very detailed insights about, you know, what would go well and not well. And I don't know, it was really cool. I worked with a really big healthcare system that is no longer around. They merged with another bigger healthcare system, but that was like something that really got me into healthcare, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, so I did that for a while. I worked at a small agency. I went back to school in between and got my master's.
What'd you get your master's in?
Media studies. So
to like really solidify the social media knowledge.
No, it was more of like, so media studies was more of like a critical, you know, like a theoretical critical analysis type of degree. So,
like film theory?
Kind of like, so I was a TA and I taught media writing, which was really fun. So half the class was like, hey, you didn't learn proper writing in high school, so we're going to beat all those bad habits out of you and put good ones into you. And so that was really fun. And then here's how to write a press release. Here's how to write a Facebook post. Here's how to do a news article, you know, an inverted pyramid news article, that kind of thing. And then I came into it just saying, I like food and I want to write about food, and I don't know what I want to write about food, but I know that I want it to be food related. And so I was like really into like Michael Pollan and stuff. And then by the end of college, I was like, he's not keeping in mind all of these structural inequities. You know, that's kind of where it went. So I got into college. I just would say, hi, my name's Sammi and I like food. And that was like my intro for like what I wanted to do with my thesis. But I started getting interested. My advisor was like, I think geography might be a good route for you. Cause I was looking at like there's a local gardening nonprofit in my old town, and I was looking at what they were doing and kind of like the promotions that they were doing to like build these garden beds around the city. And he's like, I think like thinking about the way the city is formed would be like a good way for you to have like a depth of knowledge behind what the organization is doing, and, you know, like what ways it might help or not help the city. And so he connected me with this human geography course about critical race theory. And that's when I got really interested in, like it was all about like, how is a city formed, or what are theories about how cities are formed? What happens when freeways are built? What happened with white flight in the suburbs, you know, and how has that changed our food landscape? And so that is something that I got really interested in college. And I actually went to pursue my PhD in human geography, and I was looking more at like food equity. And then I started looking more at health because I was experiencing some health. Well, I still am experiencing health issues. And so I was looking at kind of like bodies and how they move through space and how they're valued based on how healthy they are and what they provide to the economy, and how different bodies are treated by doctors and And so, but I had to leave that program because I was too sick to continue, which was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it was a really, so it's weird because it's hard to say. Like I started as a musician and then I ended as a geographer, and now I'm back in marketing. It's just kind of weird, but I'm just interested in a lot of different things, I guess.
But you still used all of the, like, the things that you're putting out into the world, though, are, engaging all of these different things. So you've written the food blog for a long time, right? And you have this. Oh, yeah,
I didn't mention that.
You communicate, well, because it's, you talk about this moment where you, like, got really into the local garden until you want to be involved in all this food stuff. And yes, maybe you were unable to finish the program, but that doesn't mean that your interest ended. You've been working on researching on your own for many years and putting information out there there, like well-researched information out there for people to help them with, so don't discount the fact that you may not have been able to get the PhD. Rarely does a person get a PhD. I don't have one. I mean, so don't feel bad about that. You're actually doing the real world work. It's almost like we were talking about, to harken back to the actors and the tech people. You're doing the tech work, man. You're putting the words out there. You're helping the people. You're getting the information. Yeah, you could have been a PhD, i.e. lead actor, gotten all the accolades. Like, look at me. I don't know if you can call me doctor. Dr. Sammi is what you can call me. That's right. But you're still doing it. So like, you're in the trenches, getting the word out there, sharing with people. You're managing your own illness, and you're helping other people to, number one, find out that that's the reason why they don't feel good, and give them resources, right? And that's totally helping all of these things that you wanted to do. You're doing it.
So yeah, so I should talk about my food blog, because that was a big part. That was like a big through line in my life. So, and it's so weird. I like went back and looked at my old tweets, like, I don't remember when. And I was like, what did I used to tweet about when Twitter started, And I saw the beginnings of my blog, which was so cool. And I was like, I think I'm going to write a blog about being dairy free. Is anyone interested in that? I'm trying to figure out what to call it. And like, I had all these tweets, like, planning out my blog, and I'm just like not very active on Twitter anymore. It's weird when you do that stuff for your job, you put your own projects last a lot. That's just kind of what happens. But I was like forming it online, and then I launched it in like 2013. And I've got like a podcast I just put out this week that I was a little late, a lot late, but I'm working on getting my June calendar back. So by the time you hear this, there should be some really nice new crispy fresh content for you at dairyfreestate.com, everyone. But I started it as a resource for myself, because I was sick of buying dairy-free food that tasted awful. And I was like, I'm not wasting my money on this stuff anymore. I want to have a repository where I can record the things that worked for me and didn't work for me, the things I liked and didn't like, and anything that I find out along the way, any advice that I have, I would like to be able to share it. So I started Dairy Free State for that reason. And I've kind of been on and off with it over the past 8 years in terms of like being really active and not active. And now I'm starting to get active again. I have like 50 posts planned out, and like a few every week, and about all kinds of different things. I'm going to kind of move in a different direction, I think, but it'll still all tie in. But what you can find on there mostly is like dairy-free versions of recipes that I liked and I wanted to be able to eat, reviews. And for some reason, I like mostly review yogurt. I don't know why I mostly review yogurt. It's just like happens that way. But I actually probably have 2 or 3 more yogurts that will be posted in the next couple of months. So you will know what yogurts to eat and not eat, people. And I did for a while, I did a lot of interviews, and maybe I'll go back to that again. I did do some interviews during the pandemic as well, at the beginning of the pandemic. It's not over. And, I interviewed somebody who actually, this was such bad luck, but she's still kicking, which is great. She started a zero waste food supply, like a bulk place. And she's got like cleaning supplies and things like that. And it opened up like right before COVID. And so she was like, great, good timing. And she pivoted really well. She's got an online shop. She'll do like local delivery if you order over $20, which isn't hard to do. And she's got really amazing products. So it was fun to interview her. But yeah, I've always tried to just think, before I knew what SEO was in 2013, I don't think I was aware of SEO until like 2016. I was just like, what's useful to people? What questions do I have? And some of those posts where I wasn't even focusing on search engine optimization about being first on Google are still the most popular posts on my blog, because I knew that they would be useful. And then at the beginning of 2020, actually, I don't know if you've ever had her on your show, but my friend Michelle Gilliam helped me write my first ebook at the beginning of February 2020. And she like poked and prodded me until I got it done. And it was like 100 pages of like all the things that I've experienced, you know, over like the 14 years I was dairy free, and just all the advice that I had for anybody who was looking to do it themselves. And it was nice. It was like you were saying, it was kind of a culmination of a lot of things and going, oh, wow, I actually do know a lot about the subject because I've lived it, you know, for half my life now. So I kind of know a couple things. And over the past 5 years, I've been dealing with like chronic pain, and I've had a lot of gut issues and things like that. And so we're working on that. We're sorting it out. With chronic conditions, it can take a long time to figure out like what's going on with you. With a person, it can take like an average of 5 years to get a diagnosis. So I'm about at that mark. But I got diagnosed with SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is just like a long way of saying there's bacteria where it shouldn't be. It's not bad. It's good bacteria, but it's just in my small intestine. And there are special diets and things like that that you can do to help make yourself feel pretty normal. And a lot of people who have IBS also have SIBO. And there's a type of diet called a low FODMAP diet. So it's like you're reducing certain sugars. They could come from like garlic and onion are big triggers. For some people, gluten can be a problem. For me, it's not, luckily, because I love bread and all that good stuff. There's, what else is kind of bad? Like apples and things like that, like different types of fructose and whatnot. So I've started eating like that. And I actually started that at the beginning of 2020. And then when the pandemic hit and I was home, I was like, well, I wasn't going to go to restaurants anyway. So I guess this is like a good time for me to explore this diet. And also I'm going to be making sourdough because that's part of a low FODMAP diet. And now everyone in the world is making sourdough at the same time as me. So now I can't buy flour. So that's cool. But yeah, so I've been doing that for the last year. So there's a lot of stuff I want to write about that and my experiences with that, because it's a diet that's better known in like Australia. It was developed in Australia and studied in Australia, but not as well known here, although it's becoming more well known. So I want to write more about that and more about my experiences with that and SIBO. And so that's kind of like the next thing for the blog. And I might get a PhD down the road because I'm going back to school in the fall to get a second master's degree in nutrition, because I just don't know when to quit.
You just love getting degrees. That is all right. It's okay.
I just like school. I mean, it's not necessarily the degree, because I do think that, and this is like the critical race theory yoga teacher training in me. I do think that academic credentials are like overvalued in a white supremacist society. So sure. I'm not like, so I'm not going to just listen to someone just because they have a degree, or value someone's opinion over someone else's just because they have a degree, because I think lived experience is really important. But for me, it was more like, I want to learn more about this on like a scientific level, and learn how to do research on this stuff, because instead of just like reading other people's research or, just talking to my doctors about it. Cause I like knowing how things work. Like, I want to know the why behind why people buy certain things. Like, I want to know, well, why do I feel so much better when I avoid these certain foods? Like, what is happening in there? I just want to know. And so that's really why I wanted to go back to school. And I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't contributing and adding like extra harm in the wellness space, because there's a lot of harm that can happen in health and wellness spaces. So that's why I went to school for yoga teacher training as well. That had a very strong social justice focus in it. And so that I'm hoping will balance my academic pursuits. So I just doing it's like,
you're still doing everything.
There's still so much more. And I'm like, it just sounds like I'm making it up sometimes when I talk about all the things I do, but
no. So I want to pull one thread that I don't know that I've found where, sort of, you talked earlier about your acting and how you were like destined to be an actor. Do you think the actor in you is, performing in the blog or the podcast, or are you scratching the itch of performing in another way? I know you mentioned that you were a gamer girl on Twitch. Is that your performance? How are you scratching the acting itch?
Yeah, so before COVID, in the before times,
yes.
I was doing murder mysteries mostly.
Oh, I love that. I did that for years. So fun.
So I did that for 6 years, and it was, and that was the interesting thing too, because I remember when I was younger, people would be like, well, you should, when I was like deciding between like music and acting, because to me, those were my only options, which is such a weird, anyway, people were like, music is more practical, so you should do that. And I was making more money as a musician when I started out. Like, I would do like orchestras, for like holiday concerts, and I'd do pit and stuff like that. And I'd make some money. But then it's like now, if I add up all the money I made as a musician versus an actor, it's like doesn't even compare. I made way more money with acting gigs, and it's not like I made that much, but it was like regular job money, like going to do these murder mysteries and things like that was like a really nice gig. And it was just a really nice community of people. I really loved everybody that I did the shows with. And so when that ended, I was like, well, what do I do? And I had like streamed on and off on Twitch with one of my friends, and I'm going to give them a plug right now. Business, BIZSNES, is a talking Super Nintendo, and someone who has many, many years of improv experience. And we've been friends for a really long time, and we used to hang out at Comedy Sports in Milwaukee. And they are so fun to watch because it is a puppet. It is a Super Nintendo puppet that's playing the game. So my friend is like doing a foot pedal with mouth moving on this puppet while playing a game. And I sat right next to it, and I still can't believe that it happened. It was the coolest thing that like I've ever seen. Anyway, so I used to sit and play next to a talking Super Nintendo, and I streamed a little bit on my own, but I had a Dell that wasn't very good and not good at streaming. And so that was one of my axes to grind with Dell. And then I got a new computer that worked pretty well for streaming. And I went, you know what? I'm not really doing anything. And I started to like host trivia games on Twitch and play some games and stuff. And then I started to cultivate an audience. I hit affiliate last May. I'm on the road to 200 followers. I'm small but mighty, but it's a fun little community that I formed. Every Tuesday we do Tuesday DIY. Right now I'm like in the stages of moving, so my schedule's a little erratic, but in normal times, every Tuesday, I'll do crafting. So I'm actually, you'll be able to see this. We can maybe explain it for everyone at home, but I made a passive aggressive cross stitch pattern that says per my last email for a friend of mine who requested it. And so I'll do like commissions on stream and like design, and I'll crochet. We're also working on this like miniature library that someday I'll put all the way together. And so that's on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, we play games, a different game every week generally, or we'll play through a game every Thursday till we're done. And then sometimes I'll hop back and forth. And then on Saturdays, I co-stream with my friend, and here's another name drop, A Black Sparrow. He plays a lot of really great games. He's a variety streamer too, and he's got a really nice community as well. And so that's kind of, Twitch really fulfilled my social needs, because I really don't need to like hang out that much. Like I was an only child, I am an only child. I'm self-directed. I'm cool doing my own thing most of the time. So when I need to like socialize with somebody, Twitch is perfect because I can control when I'm on and what I'm doing. And, you know, I would say on my busiest nights, maybe I'll have like 8 to 10 people hanging out, and we'll just like sit and talk about stuff and just whatever anyone wants to talk about. We'll talk about movies or food or projects that we're working on or whatever. And it's really, really nice. It's one of my favorite things. And I actually enjoy performing as myself more than doing anything else. You know, it's like, I was like, at first I was like, all I'm ever going to do is musicals. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm only going to do musicals, which is so weird for me to think about now. And then I did a ton of plays, and I was doing a lot of like horror plays, like Fake Blood, Fog Machine, magic trick type of stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. I like this gritty stuff. And then I did murder mysteries, and now I'm just like doing things as myself. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy them all in their own ways, but I really like just being me and just like shooting the shit with people. I think it's so fun. And Twitch is such a cool, there's so much you can find on Twitch. There's so much you can do on Twitch. We're going to start cooking and baking together as a community soon. My community we had like a group channel point goal for me to make pasta on stream, and I've never made pasta homemade before. So I'm going to try to figure it out on stream with all my followers. And It could be a disaster. I don't know. But I love cooking and baking and all that stuff. I mean, obviously I've got a food blog. And I've got a brand new, beautiful kitchen that I need to clear out so that I can go make pasta in it for everyone on Twitch.
Figure out how to set up your camera and get the right shots in your new kitchen and everything like that.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
That's so great. That is a great way to have, transitioned your acting, especially in the world that we're in right now, where not even like professional actors are acting. Like there's maybe a handful of people making movies and television shows, but the breadth of people that used to be working in theater and live performances and even video performances are just not around. So it's great that you have Twitch and a community to connect with, to do all these fun sort of stuff. One final question I want to ask you, what do you say? There are people who are just starting out, who are in the position of like really wanting to be involved in acting and music like you did. And, you've had a path with maybe 1,000 different things that you're like totally interested in, and you explored all of them. What advice do you have for people that might be just starting out, who want to be creative, but you know how it is. Everyone's always like, don't do that. That's like not good, especially these days. I'm like, what are you doing other than watching Netflix? Don't tell me actors aren't important. Like...
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question for me to answer because I was lucky. Like, my parents never told me that what I wanted to do was impractical. So I feel very fortunate to have had parents who are like they literally said this to me not long ago. They're like, just whatever you say you're going to do, I just believe you're going to do it and you're going to crush it. So I'm never worried about you, so, but if you don't have that in your life, which, not everyone is, lucky enough to have that in their lives. And I totally get that. I don't know. I guess I would say, I think the most important thing is to surround yourself with people who are collaborative and not competitive. I don't have time in my life for people who are trying to like one up me. I think that's such a waste of time. And that was something that that's like the thing that I so don't miss, right? About doing some of the shows that I said I really enjoyed doing. And I think that's kind of why I like doing Twitch and being myself and doing what I'm doing. And it's just the community that I'm in, because you can find that kind of competitive, cutthroat nature in any creative field that you go into. But I used to call I would say like, oh, well, that person is like schmackty acty, is that what I would say? And I'd be like, they're the ones who, when you go out to the bar after the show, they're like name dropping, talking about their next project, talking about, oh, I'm working at, this theater or whatever, doing this. Oh, I'm going to get equity for the whatever. And I was just like so deeply uninterested in that. And I was like, can't you talk about anything else? Like all you want to do is talk about acting when we just like acted on stage. Like, don't you want to talk about the news or like a recipe or like something, a video game you like something else? Like, don't you bring anything else to the table? And it always drove me bonkers. Like, I was just like, why can't we just be people talking about other things? And those tended to be the people who were, the most competitive because they were like singularly focused on reaching this goal and getting this point. And it was a lot. I mean, being in Milwaukee, it was like, oh, well, I can't wait to move to Chicago or New York or LA or whatever. And I'm like, cool, you don't want to be here? Fine. And I was kind of like, I'm focused on making this like a community that I want to be in. And I want the projects to be interesting and I want the people I work with to be cool. And so when I've started to seek out those like-minded people who just like wanted to build things with me. And if it felt like they weren't doing it in the nature of like, we're doing this as a team and they like wanted to get out in front and like take the glory for it, that just like turned me off to working with them. So my friend who plays as business on Twitch is such a good example of someone who is like so team oriented, wants everyone to succeed, would invite people on their channel just to play. And when they were just starting out, it was like they noticed that a lot of people didn't want to come over and play games because, oh, your community is 50 people, who cares? And now they're at like probably like 15,000. They're partnered. They're not like huge, but they're big and making money at it and all that good stuff. And then, of course, the people come out of the woodwork and say, oh, can I do this? Oh, well, I'd like to come play with you now. And it's like, oh, so now that I've reached this level, then you want to play with me. So this is kind of maybe abstracted, but this isn't like super concrete or anything. But I would just say when you're working on a project, make sure that you're connecting with people who don't care how big it is or how big it gets or how much credit they get. Like that they're just excited to try something goofy with you. I do a bunch of stuff. It's not like any of the things I do have this massive following, but it's like every once in a while I get an email from someone saying, your blog changed my life. And I'm like, what? I did what? I just reviewed yogurts. And they're like, it changed everything for me. And you're like, holy cow, I had no idea that I had that effect on that person, or I'll have a friend come onto my Twitch stream and say, I was really stressed out today. I was really high key and I came into your room and you're just so chill. We're just sitting there building a house on The Sims. And it was exactly what I needed today. And it really helped me relax, and it's like, don't focus on, oh, I have to hit this number. I have to reach this goal. I have to have this level of success to be legitimate or to be a performer, or to be a creative. I believe that if you're at home doing claymation for yourself, you're already a creative person. Or, you know what I mean? Like if you're doing skits with your friend, like you're already a performer. There isn't like a level of credit that you need. And there's a lot of people who are like at the top who are not good people. I would rather be.
Also, there's lots of people who have reached heights that you think are going to be the like top heights. And they're still like, I don't know if I'm happy yet. There's always more. There's always the next thing. Okay, here's a good yoga principle. All right. So one of my teachers, Artie, talks about how, like in one of her classes, we talked about how yoga is about the process and not about the destination. So a lot of people will go into a yoga class and say like, well, I want to touch my toes. Or like, say you're in like seated forward bend, right? And you're like trying to reach your toes. It's like, okay, well, once you do that, what's next?
you reach past your toes, you grab your feet, you put your head closer to your legs, your head's touching your legs. What next? You go through the floor? Like what, there's always going to be that next thing that you're trying to do. And if you make yoga about the destination, you're never going to get there. And so yoga is designed to be about the process, about, how do you feel in this pose? How can you create a feeling of ease in your body? How can you calm? There's one of the Yoga Sutras is about 1.2, I believe. It's about like calming the mind stuff, right? And that's like the whole point of yoga. So how do you calm the mind stuff in this pose? How are you trying to connect to your center? How do you feel inside? Instead of like, am I reaching this concrete goal? And I think that that's something that I see going wrong with so many. I mean, at least I feel that it's wrong. That's subjective. In creative endeavors is if you're always just waiting to hit the next goal, you're not enjoying the process and you're not enjoying the journey. And you're going to look back and like, wouldn't you rather enjoy yourself? I don't know. That's how I look at it. So
no, it's true. It's true. You want to be a film actor? Well, in case you were unsure, to do a film, you spend 2.5 years preparing this film. How many hours per day are you actually acting? Sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes that's it. You know what I mean? So if you're not interested in the larger journey, if you don't like appreciate the idea that like the people who are setting up the lights are like creating this whole look and you're like, oh, isn't that cool what they're doing? Like it's not even daytime, but it looks like daytime. It's crazy. Or if you don't appreciate it, you're going to be mad when you've got, okay, well, wait in your trailer and we'll come get you. And then you come out and they're like, okay, say your line. And you're like, and that's what we did with the peanut butter. And you say it 4 times and they go, great, thanks, go back there. And that's your whole day. Sometimes your whole week. You're not going to be happy because you're like, oh, what was that? But if you appreciate the process, if you appreciate the journey, you can be waiting your turn to be in the process, but knowing that all these awesome, intricate little bits and pieces are coming together and that like 50 other people are like literally working on tiny little tasks that come together to create this amazing movie magic that make you look beautiful and great and cool and in another world. Like, that's awesome. So I mean, if you don't appreciate all the other things and the whole experience of what you're doing, well, you're just stealing that from yourself.
Totally. So whatever you do to tie it all together,
to tie it all together,
to yoke it all together. Enjoy. If you're just starting out, whatever you're doing, just take time to enjoy that process. Don't worry about where you're going. Just find the thing that you like doing. Find like-minded people. They are out there. There are people who believe that teamwork is better than, going it yourself and getting all the glory. Find those people and you're going to have so much more fun. And then you're not going to think about, the destination. You're just going to think about that journey.
Totally. Sammi, thank you so much for being on the podcast and chatting with me about your creative journey. You're just so multifaceted. It's so amazing to hear all the different things that you're interested in and the way that you've used your skills. I mean, I don't think people really, truly use every skill that they've gotten along the way. And I think that, with all of your different interests, you've been able to like really use all of the things that came naturally to you when you were growing up, but then also things that you were like, I'm going to spend time to do a lot of education so that I'm prepared to do more of this other stuff. And every time you want to do something cool, you want to educate yourself more. And that's just so awesome. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing and being inspirational to, all the creative people out there. And thank you also for chatting with me.
Oh my gosh, of course. I had so much fun.
Great.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com or Check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.